They had a problem with communism because when Stalin took over, they set up the Internationals and they began to spread the communist doctrine. And there were strong communist parties in Italy and France and Germany, even the United States. So these wealthy capitalists became fearful. Well, we don't want a one world communist because then we can't play off one side against the other and have, you know, have an arms race and make lots of money. So what did they do? They went in Germany and found a German army intelligence agent who was reporting back to his captain, and they sent him to infiltrate a little party called the German Workers' Party. And he went back and said, you guys are going to like these guys. They think we were standing back in World War I. They want to rearm Germany. You know, they want a prosperous nation. And so the bankers and the members of the Thule Society, it was the aristocrats in Germany, they all supported this army intelligence agent, whose name, of course, was Adolf Hitler. He changed the name to the National Socialist German Workers' Party, the NSDAP. And in the German National Sozialistica, the acronym was Nazi. So he formed the Nazi Party. And this was a block against the spread of communism. And he was fully supported by banks in the West. Slide. Look at all these people that were supporting. Now, of course, on the German side, you can imagine IG Farben and Zeiss and Bosch, Daimler-Benz, Siemens. Those are all understandable, but look who was supporting him in the United States. All right? In fact, if it wasn't for IBM and the IBM punch cards that they sent through the IBM office in Poland after the Nazis took over Poland, they never would have been able to ship those Jews to the concentration camp near as expediently. Late in the war, Standard Oil ships were refueling German U-boats in the Caribbean. It's all a business deal. And the banks, Union Banking Corporation, is one I would point out to you because in late 1942, this is like in the middle of World War II, one of the directors of Union Banking Corporation was prosecuted under the Trading with the Enemies Act by the United States government, fined millions of dollars and stripped of his holdings in Union Banking Corporation. And they said he was nothing but a financial front man for Hitler and the Nazis. Who was that? Prescott Bush. George Herbert Walker Bush's father, and George W.'s grandfather. So we see the seeds of National Socialism being sown in the United States. And of course, they're all answerable to, in 1936, Time magazine said the Schroeder-Rockefeller Company was the economic booster of the Rome-Berlin axis. And of course, their lawyers were John Foster and Allen Dulles. Slide. Now, why then did the same people who created Hitler suddenly turn on him? Because when Hitler took over as chancellor in Germany in early 1933, Germany was on its knees financially. Half the country was out of jobs. You heard the stories about hyperinflation was eating them up. They had to carry wheelbarrow loads of money just to get a loaf of bread. And in 2 years, just 2 years, Hitler turned it around. By 1936, that's 3 years, they were the shining example of Europe with the Berlin Olympics. Everybody's back to work. How did he do that? He did it very simply. He didn't borrow money. He didn't go into hock to the international bankers. He issued his own money through the Deutsche Bank, okay? And he created works projects, the Autobahn, and these buildings and public works, put everybody back to work. They're all getting a paycheck. They go out and buying goods and services. Money's flowing. And within 2 years, he put Germany back on its feet. There's been 2 U.S. presidents that's tried the same thing. Abraham Lincoln, when he issued greenbacks to support the war between the states, and John F. Kennedy, who in June of 1963 ordered $4.2 billion in currency issued not through the interest drawing Federal Reserve System, but through the U.S. Treasury Department. And I have some of those notes. It says United States note, and they have red ink on it. Money's not worth any more or less than Federal Reserve notes, but we don't have to pay interest on it. And I don't think it's a sheer coincidence that Lincoln and Kennedy were both shot in the head in public. do not go against those international bankers. The same bankers who are looting this country today and then charging us for the privilege. We have to pay more and more tax money. It's incredible, but then we're zombies. But what about Hitler? You know, well, he lived, yeah, because he was surrounded by loyalists, unlike Kennedy and Lincoln. But there were 25 assassination attempts against Hitler. So they tried to kill him too. And now they've demonized him. And I'm not trying to say he's a nice guy. I don't want to live under Hitler anymore. I want to live under Obama or George Bush. But he's been demonized, but largely because he took on these international bankers. So they had to start World War II to stop him. Slide. Even Churchill admitted it. He said, you must understand the war is not against Hitler or National Socialism, but against the strength of the German people, meaning the economic strength, which must be smashed once and for all, regardless of whether it's in the hands of Hitler or a Jesuit priest. They didn't care who's in charge. They liked National Socialism. They just didn't want the Germans heading the international economic order. Slide. So, now we see the rise of the Fourth Reich. Slide. Because after the war, of course, who brought them all those National Socialists over here? And we have the Federal Reserve System, which is neither federal, nor does it have any reserves. Slide. In fact, Ben Bernanke, chairman of the Fed's Board of Governors, and asked about the Great Depression of the 30s, said, yes, we did it. We're sorry. So they've admitted that the Great Depression, the collapse of Wall Street in 1929, this was all contrived. This was manipulated. Just like they're manipulating us today. 2009, when he's asked, what about these trillions of taxpayer money that's been sent overseas to bail out foreign banks? Said, what'd you do with the money? Who got it? And what did they give us, in return? What did they offer as collateral? He said, well, we're a private company. I don't have to tell you that. That's your money. That's your money. And he doesn't have to tell you what he did with it. And it's going offshore. Are we zombies or what? Slide. Now, we talk about a trillion as if, well, a trillion this, a trillion that. Think about a trillion. A trillion square miles is 3.7 million states the size of Texas. That's unimaginable, isn't it? That's unimaginable. And yet we're talking about trillions of our dollars going where? According to Bernanke, well, I don't know, and then I can't tell you. And you all put up with it, because we're zombies. Slide. Yep, credit swaps, bailouts, stimulus money, trade deficit, all they got terms for everything, but what it means is money out of your pocket. And we're hurting, and we're still, and now they're talking about we're going to have more money to bailouts. Slide. And then, meanwhile, under the table, while you're watching American Idol or the Cowboys or some other, really important thing, they're doing stuff like the Financial Stability Board, which in April 2009 was signed on to by President Obama. Now it's called the Financial Stability Board. It used to be the Financial Stability Committee of the Bank for International Settlements, the BIS, which was taken over by the Nazis, was created actually during the 20s for handle reparations from Germany after World War I, and it was taken over by the Nazis, and then has been handled money. This is the International Bankers Bank, okay? So now we've signed on to this Financial Stability Board, which is a function of the BIS, and which is going to standardize the economies of the world, meaning ours. Now we got Nazis in charge of our money, as well as our rocket program, and our biochemical program, and all the other stuff. Slide. Thomas Jefferson, all you got to do is listen to him. I sincerely believe banking establishments are more dangerous than standing armies. And that's the truth. If I ask you to give me all your money, I'll keep it safe for you, and then, if you want a little bit, come ask me, I'll give a little bit back to you. You tell me to go to hell, wouldn't you? But if I build a big building, and it's got steel and glass, and it looks nice, I got a big sign on it that says bank, you go in, you give me all your money, won't you? Now think about it, here it is, let me tell you, here, for some of you, I know me, I had to make a real study of finances because the reason I got into journalism is because they said that was a degree plan that didn't require any math. If I could do math, I'd be one of those bankers. I wouldn't be here talking to you, I'd be making money. Okay, here's how it works. So I set up, I got me a building here, I say, I'm a bank, okay? So you come in, you got $100. You give me your $100, okay? At that point, you're out the $100, but I've got an asset, I got $100. But do I keep that $100? No, I turn around and load it to him. Here's $100 at 20% interest, okay? So now, that $100 was originally an asset, but now it's out the door, so now it's a liability, so now that negates it. So that $100 is nothing. Except, when he pays back $100 plus the interest, there's $20 in there. Now you come and you want your $100 back. I say, okay, here's your $100 back. Well, what about the $20 it made? You don't get that back. I get that back. I paid $20 for nothing. Except writing some entries. That's the way banking works. Pretty good scam. Slide. Thomas Jefferson also said, democracy will cease to exist when you take away from those who are willing to work and give to those who would not. And I read this example, and I'm going to share this with you. And I'm sorry about going on, but this is so important to me. And I'm trying to explain to you guys what's going on. There was a political science teacher who had a big class, and they got to arguing about socialism. And a lot of these young guys had brought up young people that said, oh, socialism, wow, that's so good. You know, we got to help all the poor people. Got to help this and that. And he says, okay. He said, I'm going to give you this example of socialism in action. He said, from now on, he said, I'm going to give the class 1 grade. I'm going to average all your grades, we'll give you 1 grade. Okay? So the first time they had a test, the class made a B. Because most of them had studied, made good grades, but some of them hadn't studied at all. But everybody got a B. Well, everybody generally was pretty happy with that. I know when I was in college, I'd take a B anytime. Okay? So that was all right. Except, of course, for the handful that really studied and had made an A, they didn't get an A. They got a B. They weren't very happy. So the second test, class average went down to a C. Because the ones who studied made an A but only got a B, said, well, why should I study? Okay? I'm just going to get whatever the class gets. All right? Third test went down to a D, and by the end of the semester, the whole class failed. Because people said, well, why should I work when I'm only going to get what the class gets? So nobody, and by the time they went through that process, nobody was studying, nobody passed. The whole class failed. That's socialism in action. That's the way it works. And that's why you don't really know. Yes, we need programs to help people. But that can be handled. And should be handled on the local level. Because at the local level, in your community, you know who truly needs help. And you know who's simply trying to take a free ride. And that's why you do not want a national or an international socialist system, because how is somebody in Washington, D.C., how are they supposed to know who in your community truly deserves help and who's just out for a free ride? Slide. So, but now we're pushing socialism now because we got Obama, but let's go back and look. Let's find out where the change really is. From 89 to 93, during the administration of George Herbert Walker Bush, every member of his cabinet except for Dan Quayle, who couldn't spell potato, and his buddy Jim Baker and Louis Sullivan were members of the Secretive Council on Foreign Relations, that Wall Street centered center of economic power. All right. Well, then we get a Democratic administration, Clinton, in 1993 2000. Oops, all of his cabinet members, except for Secretary of Defense William Berry, were Council on Foreign Relations. But then we get George W. Bush, good Republican administration. Oops, Cheney, Powell, Rice, Rumsfeld, Robert Gates, Lane Chow, all members of the Council on Foreign Relations. Rich get richer, we get poorer. But then we get Obama. Slide. Okay, this is what it is. Oh, yeah, Barack Hussein Obama, change you can believe in. Except look at his cabinet. Robert Gates still on there. Richardson, Rice, Jones, Geiger, all Council on Foreign Relations. Where's the change? There's no change. And there's no conservative liberal. There's no Democrat Republican. They're all controlled by the same bunch. There's only two parties in the United States. There's the ultra-rich and the rest of us. Okay? And the sooner we realize this, the sooner we get something done and not being run from pillar to post, you know, being distracted with Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative. Right? So all they did in 2008 was swap us from National Socialism to Marxist socialism. You see, under the Bush administration, they called it neoconservatism. Well, that was just a fancied-up term for National Socialism. And that's why it really threw off true Republican constitutional conservatives. Because Bush said all the right things. Everybody said, boy, what a good conservative. Yet he talks about less government control, you know, less foreign adventurism, you know, more state individual liberty. He said all the right things. But what happened? We didn't get any of that. We get foreign wars that we're still fighting. We don't even really understand why or how or what it's all about. You know, look at Iraq. Well, we had to go in Iraq because Saddam Hussein was within 6 weeks of developing a nuclear bomb. Well, it turned out to be that was just totally bogus. Oh, well, okay, well, we had to go in there because he had weapons of mass destruction. Well, no, that was totally bogus. Well, no, we had to go in there because we had to get control over the oil. Well, hey, before we went in there, we were only getting 14% of our foreign oil from Iraq, and now we're not even getting that much because they blowing up pipelines and they're fighting all through the countryside. So that's bogus. So what are we there for? Oh, that's right. We're there to bring freedom and democracy. Oh, wait a minute. In 2009, after Blackwater, those hired mercenaries, those contractors, wiped out about 47 people in an indiscriminate gunfight in a square, the government of Iraq, who, let's face it, our puppet little government, said, we're tired of this. We want them out of here. And the United States said, oh no, we have contracts with them. They have to stay. How's that for freedom and democracy? So it's all bogus, folks. Just being lied to up and down the line. Slide. Oh, we won't even go into healthcare. God, you realize you're not even going to be able to sell your home when healthcare finally goes into effect in 2014. Because if you don't meet the carbon footprint standards, then you got to bring it up to those standards, and most people are not going to be able to afford to do that, which means wherever you're living now, that's probably where you're going to be in the rest of your life. Slide. And it just goes on and on. And now, by the way, oh yeah, I love this. You are going to just love the health care plan because now y'all have been paying, any of you will work for an employer, and you've been paying out big bucks for your health care, right? On a shared basis with the employer. Well, starting next year, you're going to pay taxes on that money that you've had to pay into your health care. Yeah, you're going to love it. Slide. Basically, Obama's health care thing, we know they took over General Motors. So basically his health care plan is, you're going to buy a Chevrolet. And if you say, well, I don't want to buy a Chevrolet, then they say, well, then we're going to take that money for a new Chevrolet out of your taxes and out of your retirement fund. That's socialism in action. Slide. And now, why are we so zombified? Because right now, 2/3 of the water supply in this country, and I think this includes Arlington, I know it includes Dallas-Fort Worth, is fluoridated. Sodium fluoride is what the Nazis found out you could put in the concentration camp water and keep the inmates passive and docile. Sodium fluoride is a waste product of the aluminum processing, manufacturing. And it is a deadly poison. Prior to World War II, it was only used as a rat poison. Okay, but then after the war, there were international conventions said you cannot dump this terrible waste product, sodium fluoride, in the water, in the oceans, because it'd kill off the oceans. So what did they do? Alcoa and a bunch, they said, well, we'll just get everybody to drink it. Pretty slick. And put in your toothpaste. Read that toothpaste. If you have a child under 2 years old, says don't let them use this, don't let them swallow this. If they do, call the Centers for Disease Control. Wow, I sure want some of that in my mouth. I sure want to give it to my kids. What's wrong with us? We're zombies, man. And yet you go in there and they say that on the toothpaste, and yet you go in the stores and where you used to have one little shelf of bottled water, now that's a whole aisle of water. It's all fluoridated, most of it. And then you go find the little, beautiful little bottle that says baby water. Now this is bottled water for infants. Boy, you sure want to give it to infants. With fluoride added. Great. And then we wonder why the autism rates are going through the roof. Charles Perkins said in 1954, it's mass control, sodium fluoride. Slide. One of the things we're really concerned about in this country are school shootings and teen suicides, as well we should be. But all the media can talk about is guns. Wait a minute, I grew up in Texas. We took guns to school. Had friends with guns in the back of the pickup. You know, we had guns. Nobody ever shot anybody. It's not the guns, folks. It's the drugs. Every single shooter that I've been able to backtrack on, and that's about all of them, and the only reason I can't say definitely every single one of them is because a few of them, like Cho from Virginia Tech, he got his medical records sealed, so you can't get in there. But in the early stories, they said he was on psychiatric care and on psychotropic drugs. They're all on these antidepressant psychotropic drugs, which apparently coming off of them is even worse than going on. And now, at the first of this year, guess what the leading cause of death was in the U.S. Army? Suicide. And why is that? Because they're putting them all on these antidepressants. And then they're coming home, they're killing themselves, they're killing their families. They had to shut down Fort Campbell, Kentucky, first of the year because of suicides. It was rampant. Well, they got guns, but it's the drugs. But you're not going to hear about that. Why? Because, think about it. You watch TV. If they're not selling you a truck, they're selling you a drug. It's the largest advertiser in the United States. They're not going to offend their advertisers, so you're not going to hear about that except from crazy me. Slide. Big Farm 2008 grows more than $800 billion worldwide, with more than $80 billion for psychiatric drugs. And as I said, now you ought to see that the number of psychiatrists in the U.S. Army has jumped from a few hundred to several thousand. And now they're prescribing these drugs like they're candy. And then wonder why people are flipping out. Slide. Now, Dr. Judy Geverty, all through the Bush administration, she was head of the CDC. Okay? Oh, you got to take your vaccines. Take those vaccines. Got to protect you and your family. Got to take those vaccines. And then soon as the Bushes are out of office, she resigns to become president of Merck Pharmaceuticals Vaccine Division. Now, folks, this is just wrong. Now, I don't know Dr. Geverty. She may be a perfectly fine person. But just the sheer presence and appearance here of conflict of interest is wrong. We should not be allowing these people in the federal government who are supposed to be looking out for our protection to be nothing but hirelings for these pharmaceutical corporations. And the doctors have it bad. Doctors are overworked. Any of you know a doctor, you know what I'm talking about. They barely keep up with it. And why? Is it that it's not necessarily just the patients. It's keeping up with those insurance forms. It's keeping up with all that billing. It's keeping up with all this stuff. I know 3 close friends of mine that are my age who are doctors. One of them's already retired. He's gotten out of it. Another's working in an emergency room, so he just draw a paycheck and go on. He doesn't have to worry with all that. And the third one's thinking very seriously of getting out. In a few years, with an aging population, you're going to have a hard time finding a doctor. And when you do, you're going to have one that's going to answer to the national health care death panels, as they call them. Oh, he's 68 years old, huh? Wants a heart transplant, huh? Well, that's not really economically feasible, so we're going to say no on that one. Slide. Swine flu hoax, look at that. And what they don't tell you is that look at what you're getting in those vaccines. Adjuvant, squalene, MF59, thimerosal, you name it. That's what causes problems. All right, knocks down the immunization system. In addition to the mycoplasma that is now spreading throughout the population, because in 1986 we sold this Nazi initiated and U.S. military perfected germ warfare to Saddam Hussein in 1986. He used it on the Kurds and he used it on our troops. And they came back sick. And for 10 years we told them, there's nothing wrong with you, it's on your head. And finally they said, well, okay, we'll call it Gulf War syndrome. And now it's spreading through the population. And what do they want you to do? Take more vaccines, which will depress your immunization system, which will leave you wide open to it. Slide. Now, why do they want to do that? Because, I'll quote Prince Philip, human population growth is probably the single most serious long-term threat to survival. If it isn't controlled voluntarily, it will be controlled involuntarily by an increase in disease, starvation, and war. Well, isn't that what we see going on now? Disease, all these strange diseases going around. Starvation, Africa's being decimated. War, we got Afghanistan, Iraq. By the way, who can tell me the date that we were told that we were going to disengage from Iraq? We're going to have our combat troops out there by? That was in 2010, but then they upped it, didn't they? They said, okay, it's going to be 2011, right? Well, by the way, in case you hadn't been listening, now they say it's 2014. And in 2014, they'll say, well, actually, it's going to be 2016. We're never going to get out there. You don't go over there and build those multi-billion-dollar bases that we built and then just walk away from it. You're being lied to. And why? And this is all part of this population control. They want to decrease the human population. As Prince Philip said, if it isn't controlled voluntarily, it'll be controlled involuntarily. And just to show that he wasn't misquoted, just to show where their thinking is, slide. Well, first let me explain this. Overpopulation is overhyped. Right now, the current average living space in Hong Kong is 1,700 square feet. That's a pretty decent sized little apartment, okay? Well, based on that 1,700 square feet, the entire population of the world could live quite comfortably in the state of Texas. I don't want them to. Go somewhere else. But they could, okay? So the point is, we really don't have an overpopulation problem. We have a population concentration problem. Everybody's jammed in these big cities, okay? And there's also another problem in that thanks to technology, there's not enough work for everybody. But thanks to the Christian work ethic, if you're not working, you're a bum. And so, you know, there's no work and yet there's no jobs, and you know, what are we going to do? Well, let's get rid of some of these people. And that's the thinking of this uber rich, of this wealthy elite, these self-styled globalists who want to control the world. They say there's just too many people. Slide. Again, Prince Philip says, in the event I'm reincarnated, I'd like to return as a deadly virus in order to contribute something to solve overpopulation. And it's not just him. Okay, Maxwell Taylor says in the interview I've got from him from 1972, says in the beginning of the next century, hey, it's now, he said we've got to reduce the world population. We'll do this through limited conflicts, starvation, disease. They want to kill us, folks. This is not just some academic, theological discussion. They want to kill you. You better start paying attention, because this isn't some academic discussion. This is self-defense. Slide.